People may claim different things, but claim is a different story. Evidence is a different story. If you look at all the evidence, not the one I presented today, whatever I presented, plus everything and anything that is available to this day, okay, there is no evidence, zilch, zero, for the separation of Yamuna from Saraswati, what is that timeline they are talking, 2700 BCE or after. There is zilch evidence, zero, nada, for separation of Shatudri from Saraswati, 2700 BC or after. So subject is river Saraswati. And we know Saraswati as also a goddess of learning, goddess of Vak, like a language, but also Buddhi, learning, and so many other things. We will not discuss how the deification of something like a river happens. That is something well known to Indian audience in general, and there are many other sources to study it. We are going to look at this beautiful river and its very deep ancient history down to our times. Now, River Saraswati does not exist anymore, but it does exist in our psyche. So the subtopic, subtitle you can say is When Geology Weds Itihasa. If you look at the empirical evidence from various disciplines of science, and if we can bring them together with our phenomenal ancient Indian narratives, what does it do? Okay, so that's the subject. Two parts. Part one is what happened to Saraswati. It's not there today, right? But everyone talks about it. All our ancient Indian narratives talk about it. So what happened to it? What happened to Saraswati? And then the part two is what is happening with Saraswati. So the first one is like a factual, what actually happened to Saraswati. The second part is what various stakeholders for different reasons trying to do with Saraswati. Okay, so they understand the difference between to and with. So let's begin with part one. What happened to Saraswati? The story can be told in 1 minute. The story can be told in 1 hour. And story can be told over a full course, multiple courses. We can talk about Saraswati forever. There is so much information about it. I will do like a somewhere between like a 3-minute part in just part one. If you look at the geology data, the available data, and why is this important? Because we can only talk about the evidence that we have. For example, Nyaya Darshana says, Pramana Paschartha Pratipatte. Okay, only using evidence we can prove something. So we need evidence. So using the evidence that is available today, what we can say is that Saraswati, the grandest, the greatest, the grandest river of India, definitely existed as long as or as early as 172,000 years ago. There should be no confusion whatsoever in anybody's mind, assuming you accept science, assuming you accept empirical evidence, and so on. Now, where was that Saraswati flowing? It was flowing somewhere around the Bikaner area. Okay, so of course it was coming from Kurukshetra, and the Yamuna is coming from the left side, you can say, or to the south. Shatudri is coming from the top. Saraswati, many rivers from the Kurukshetra areas are coming together. That was also called Saraswati. And then it was the grand river that was flowing through this area. Now, something happened around 70,000 years ago. And somewhere I will tell you my conjecture, my theory for what might have actually happened. But when it's a conjecture, I'm not saying that that is exactly what happened. Okay, I'll come to that point. But let's go just that something happened around that 70,000 years ago. And some of you can start relating to it, by the way. But the course of River Saraswati shifted in the northwest direction. So it shifted to the north and also somewhat westward direction. Same Saraswati, still the rivers that are feeding the tributaries are the same. Okay, but now instead of flowing near Bikaner, now it started flowing near Kalibanga. Okay, still in Rajasthan. That's the story some 70,000 years ago. Now since 70,000 years ago to almost our times, it is flowing in that same area. But let's look at another time bracket from 70,000 to 50,000 BC. Same river, same tributaries, okay? But it is flowing near Kalibanga, Anupgarh, and that area. Between 50,000 and 40,000, something happened. Something happened to Saraswati. In fact, something happened to one of the tributaries of Saraswati, that is River Yamuna. What are the reasons? We will not go into that right now. But because of a combinations of reasons that we don't clearly understand, but what we do know for sure is that Yamuna separated from Saraswati. It turned south and eastward, okay, and started flowing in a different direction. Eventually, it met Ganga, okay. So Saraswati lost Yamuna. And when did this happen? There is enormous evidence, empirical evidence, going back to last 35, 40 plus years of empirical evidence, right down to our times, coming to 2020. That tells us Yamuna separated from Saraswati sometime between 50,000 BC and 40,000 BC. Let's fast forward. Now we come to 13,000 BCE, which is what? 15,000 years ago. Something interesting happened again. Now, Shatudri or Satluj, which was coming straight south and was part of River Saraswati, suddenly turned westward. Instead of coming south, it turned westward. And therefore, no longer was it feeding its water to Saraswati. This happened 13,000 BCE, plus minus 500 years. Any type of empirical data, you will usually, there are very few exceptions, but you will always get an error band. Now, if you understand this kind of research, that's not a surprise. But if you don't understand it, then you must take it on a Shraddha and not create additional confusion. Oh, how can it be an error and something like this? Read, educate yourself, do abhyas, and get comfortable how this research is done. So 13,000 BC, and now Shatudri is no longer feeding the water to Saraswati. Saraswati is kind of on its own, with, of course, the few rivers from Kurukshetra coming to itself, and Saraswati is still flowing. All right. That's it. Then eventually, of course, what happened is, because now Shatudri is not feeding, Yamuna is not feeding, Saraswati went through many ups and downs because of the intensification of monsoon, de-intensification of monsoon, many other geological events, but eventually it dried out. In fact, it started drying out 4500 BCE, and very soon, we don't know exactly when, it completely became dry. Now, through the channel of Saraswati, the water continued to flow, the periodic water, the monsoon water, and stuff like that, okay? So that even you can find today with the Ghaggar Hakra river, okay, which is kind of flows through the old channel of Saraswati. But as a Saraswati that is known to Rigveda, known to Ramayana, known to Mahabharata, was gone for last 6,000 plus years, okay? It just gone. Now, against this, now let's come to the part 2. What is happening with Saraswati? And in this case, I would say there are 3 things to look at. For those who are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Sattva, Raja, Tama, that would be an easy way to do it. For those who are not familiar with those words, I will say fraud, rhetoric, and truth. So if you go from right to the left, you can think of as a Sattva, Raja, and Tama. The fraud, many are trying to deny even the existence of river Saraswati. That's the fraud. Okay. And if some ordinary person says it, nobody might pay attention and it wouldn't matter. But I'll tell you who are these people, okay, who are creating this fraud in a broad daylight. And just not now, this is happening for a long time. The rhetoric is that middle Rajasa, some things are good, okay, because their intention is not bad. But when it comes to the scientific acumen, when it comes to the logical reasoning, when it comes to the making use of like our ancient Indian narratives or a background knowledge from the discipline of science, there you will find a lot of problems. And therefore, the knowledge that is created, generated, and shared is mixed. Okay, so the intentions may be right there, but we have a problem because instead of using the corroboration, falsification, validation, they can quickly jump into justification, to justify something they might be holding dear about River Saraswati in their mind. Okay. And then the last one, truth. Few are actually researching and dating it. Others are many times, just getting into some jugaad, they already have the conception, what they want to believe, and only they look at the evidence when something they may feel like it's supporting them. If something doesn't support them, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to discuss it. They want to find a way to belittle it, find a way to explain it away. So we are sattva, rajatama, or think of as a fraud, rhetoric, truth, or truth, rhetoric as a fraud. So let's go through this. The first, the fraud. And that's also the tamasic kind of thing. It's usually the anti-India narrative. That's where you'll find it. Now, for anti-India, you don't have to go outside India. You will find it inside India, outside India, everywhere. Neo-colonial narratives. Pure lies. Okay. What are some of those? Take this example. Now, what you're seeing on the right is from the Nadi Sukta. Okay, Mandal 10, 75th Sukta of Rigveda. And just few verses I'm taking there. The important point is Imam me Gange, Yamune, Saraswati, Shutudri, Stoma. Okay, and it just goes on and describes 19 rivers of that northwest part of India. Even the sequence is very beautiful. Sequence is very important. So if I just draw an arrow, start from the bottom right-hand corner. So like southeast, you can say Ganga, Yamuna. Now we don't have a Saraswati today, but that's where it would have been, like, the cemetery edge. Then Shutudri, Vipasa, Parushni, Akshini, Vitasta, Sushumna, Sindhu. It goes all the way to what is modern day Afghanistan, okay, and even parts of Iran. But this tamasic crowd, they will try to create confusion, delusion in the minds of people by making use of their positions in academia. This is an authority fallacy. What do? They will say, well, yeah, there is no Saraswati here. I don't know what these Indians who wrote Rigveda were thinking. Sometimes even they will deny that. They will say Rigveda was written outside India and then brought in. Now, they will say, well, this river here in Afghanistan or Iran area, and when the Indians were migrating outside, they took their rivers names with them, city names. Just like people from Europe, when they came to America, they brought the city names. That's how we have New York, like from Yorkshire, right? So York. Boston, there is a place Boston in UK, and Pittsburgh in Germany. And so you see all those places that existed in Europe coming here. Similarly, they took sometimes the river's name. So there is a river in Iran that's like a Saraswati became a Haravati. There is some river like that, Helmand River or some other rivers. But the anti-India crowd, anti-India narrative, they will take something that is truly an outlier and try to make it mainstream. And that is the fraud. Okay. So they will say, is that Saraswati? Because I don't see Saraswati here. I mean, these guys are worse than Charvak, because even at least the Charvak believes in Pratyaksha. Now we have a Pratyaksha evidence here. Okay, but they are worse than Charvak because they have nothing to do with the evidence. They have everything to do with the agenda that they have decided they want to impose. So you cannot blame them because that agenda is very clear. It is for us to do the study. It is for us to become enlightened. It is for us to educate each other. Now, some people will say, so what's the big deal? Like, I know that person doesn't think good of the true humanity or is not a truthful. Why bother? The reason we should worry is because they are in some time in a position which is perceived as important, because in academia, whatever they say, even when fraudulent, even when false, it shows up into mainstream social media, mainstream books, not just social media, textbooks, and so on. I mean, that's the problem of India right now with the textbooks. For example, what I'm showing you here is the Saraswati page on the Saraswati River in Wikipedia. I would encourage you to read it, just not trust it. Okay. And not because I'm telling you, you have to study it. Okay. Everything there is basically fake, basically fraudulent. It's a propaganda, and it's written in such a way to confuse us. So it's our responsibility. That's why it's important to call out the fraud. You know, you might have heard the term. If there is a fraud happening, you know that it is a fraud, and you don't say that it is a fraud, then you are a fraud. You might have heard that. So the dharmic responsibility is on the shoulder of every one of us. Who are some of these names? These are the obvious wolves, okay? These are like folks, professors in Indology departments all over the world. I just picked few, and they, not for specific reason, but they just happen to be from America. Like you have Michael Witzel, professor at Harvard in the middle, Robert Goldman at University of California, Sheldon Pollock at Columbia, Diana Eck at, again, Harvard, Wendy Donier, I don't know if she retired now, but at University of Chicago. Okay, like, and people I get these emails saying, okay, my son wants to do Indology. Which university in America I should send? I said, don't send in Indology, and definitely don't send it to America. And frankly, India is not that great either. We will look at that in a minute. Our government also doesn't understand. Our politicians don't understand. Our intellectuals, whoever they are, public intellectuals, don't understand. Can you imagine that these two individuals on the left, Robert Goldman and Sheldon Pollock, were given a Padma Shri? Okay, it's very, very, I mean, they are hardworking folks, don't get me wrong. They will write very big, thick books. It takes efforts, okay? And they may be very detailed in their own way, but it's agenda driven. It's not evidence based at all. It doesn't have the sensitivity. It doesn't even have, they don't even have a comprehension of what the itihasa are. But that just goes on. And I'm just showing you these as a representative faces, nothing specific against these specific individuals. Now what happens is their lackeys are also there in India. Okay, for example, Professor Irfan Habib, I mean, he was running Indian, what is that, ICHR for a very long time. Okay, this one paper he wrote, River Saraswati, A Defense of Common Sense. I like the title. You see, if you can find a paper, read it. What atrocious nonsense, you know, that is been written. I mean, and so then there is a word common sense in it. Yeah, such a great destruction. And Romila Thapar, again, that name is known. I put some degrees here. Again, you know what the West will do, especially if they want to do as an agenda based, is they will take these people with either low, not such a sharp intellect, low inferiority complex, people who can be easily manipulated with the awards and some conference invitations, whatnot. And they are groomed. That is the word. Okay. So Professor Irfan Habib, I think went to Oxford University, if I remember correctly. Professor Romila Thapar went to University of London. You know, oh, okay, so the big names, and the Indians are impressed because Indians' inferiority complex is a big problem. Okay, or it gets extended further into the popular media. Okay, for example, Professor R.S. Sharma, again, he's no longer there. He was also, I think, from University of London. So they give them awards, then bring them here, and now they can do the job. Okay, for the bigger powers. But then the other names you might know, like Devdutt Patnaik, for example, a good sketch artist, right? I mean, we don't have to be like offensive in the sense of like everything is bad about them. I mean, I like his sketches, but what as a narrative, what he writes is absolutely destructive for Indian civilization. Okay, because it's fraudulent. That is the point. Or see this one Rupa Pai. I don't know if you have heard the name. She's holding all the books that she has written, or some of the books. And you know what? For a novice Indian, I mean, this happens. I came to know of her through many Indian moms, who are just saying, Nireshji, I have bought books of Rupa Pai, Upanishad for Gita and Upanishad for children and Gita for children, and given it to them. And I'm saying, my God, what a blunder you have done. So their intention is right. The intention of the mothers is right, but they have not bothered to read what is inside, or if they have read it, they have not understood how much of a anti-India agenda is into them. Again, I'm saying as a freedom of expression, hey, they can do whatever they want. But if we choose to be tamasic, if we choose not to do it, we will always be at a disadvantage. One at the bottom, if you might recognize Tony Joseph, like in the social media, I said, I mean, he again denies Saraswati and all that. So I said, let's go and let's have an open debate. And what is very interesting is, so he posed the argument, he says, Nilesh, have you done any peer-reviewed papers in this subject? Then only I will debate with you. Now, never mind, he's a journalist and he has no, to the best of my knowledge, has no peer-reviewed papers in any journals, but he wants me to have it before he will debate. Again, many people don't understand. See, the debating, I mean, I encourage people, but it is really up to the individual. So I cannot be just behind him. If he doesn't want to debate, he doesn't want to debate. I will just continue to do my job. The problem is that extension of academia comes to not only Wikipedia, it comes through these books, and that becomes a mainstream. We just see the name title Gita and Upanishad and Rigveda, and we think, oh, my kid should read it. No, we cannot be such novice. Okay, so this is that tamasic fraudulent area. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, if you have heard the name, academia is a wonderful quote. Academia is to knowledge what prostitution is to love. Close enough on the surface, but to the non-sucker, not exactly the same thing. Now, many times when I post this quote on social media, or when I discuss in my lectures, people will say, but Nileshji, don't you think this is a strong wording? And I mean, they are right. But my response usually to them is not strong enough. Okay. The amount, if you study what goes on in academia, what goes on in a peer-reviewed journals, then only you're going to understand how true this statement is. Now, of course, then people jump and says, but aren't there exceptions? Like, are you saying everyone is a bad? No, this is a problem of a logic, guys. Start studying Darshana Shastra. Nowhere it says that every person in academia is like that. No, in fact, Nicholas Taleb is a PhD. He's himself in academia. He gets invited because, see, academia is no problem. They invite him to be a visiting professor at many places. Okay, I criticize academia. I get invited everywhere in academia. Famous professors in academia who have read my works, who have understood it, have no problem whatsoever when I criticize academia. It's important to understand the intent of the quote. Now, I mean, I can go on and on, but if we get into question answer, I'll talk more about it. Okay. Now, what seems to be the problem? I honestly don't know what drives this behavior. But when somebody takes a truth and turns it 180-degree opposite, there can be multiple reasons for that. It could be a lack of intellect. It could be a lack of comprehension. It could be done deliberately. Whatever is the reason, one thing that Krishna mentions, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, in describing the tamasic intellect, tamasic buddhi, he says, adharmam dharmam itiya manyate tamasavruta sarvarthan viparitamsha buddhisa partha tamasic. Viparit. Everything that they come across, they see from the truth, they see exactly 180-degree opposite, viparit. So here is the truth, they see exactly opposite. What can you do? At least be aware of it, that not everyone who is telling you the truth. I don't know if you have heard this story of a Canadian bird, like in the winter, they migrate to the south. This bird started his journey late, okay, because he should have started before. And then suddenly the winter came and he's just, lost the strength from its wings. Snow is falling. And just somewhere on the Canadian-US border, somewhere it fell on the ground because it got exhausted and tired because of the cold. So what happened there is that, fortunately, you can say, it fell in the farmer's yard. And the cow was roaming around there. And by coincidence, the cow dropped the hot, moist, the cow dung just happened to drop on the top of the bird. Now, because of that, fortunately, the bird felt the warmth, it restored its strength and felt comfortable, felt happy, no longer feeling very cold, freezing, and felt happy. So started singing. The farmer's cat came, okay, took the bird out of the cow dung and ate it. And what are some of the messages in this story? The first one is, just because, somebody that craps on you is not necessarily your enemy, the cow. Somebody who removes you from the crap is not necessarily your friend, the cat. And the last sort of a humorous one is, if you are warm and happy in a pile of shit, please don't sing. Right? Now, this just happens to be just a humorous part, but humor aside, what we are saying is we cannot take everything at a face value. That is the message here. Okay. Let's go to the part 2, the pro-India, but it is outdated narrative. And therefore, we should be always on the alert to say what is truthful today based on the evidence. This is a Rajasic, it's a mixed bag. It's a pro-India, the intention is right, pro-Saraswati, but it is a mixed bag. Okay, what seems to be the problem here? Many times they don't have the overall view, and we'll talk about the overall view that Krishna recommends, okay, in Bhagavad Puran. But Bhagavad Gita also talks about it. It's a yaya dharmam adharmam cha karyam chakaryam evacha ayathavat prajanati buddhisa parthatamasi. This is a Rajasic buddhi, Rajasic intellect. The important word is ayathavat. Okay, prajanati meaning comprehending, yathavat meaning comprehending in a right fashion, or yathavat meaning not quite. That doesn't say it's completely wrong, but it's not completely right either. Okay, it's a mixed bag. Now remember, one person cannot just start and do this. Okay, we stand on the shoulders of the giants, the people came before. If we just take the story of cosmology, my favorite subject, the whole astronomy, what Einstein did is possible because of Lagrange and because of Maxwell and because of Newton. So there is no Einstein without Lagrange, without Maxwell, without Newton. Although Einstein falsified Newton's theory per se, it became like just a special case. Newton is not possible without Kepler. Kepler is not possible without Copernicus. So we can see like this. Similarly, although Kepler showed how Copernicus is wrong, that doesn't mean that Kepler is saying, oh, what a nonsense, Copernicus didn't know anything. Nothing like that. That is how the progress in science, in Adhyatma, everywhere takes place. Our acharyas disagree all the time. Okay, they might be giving their view from a particular point of view. Some of these faces you may recognize, others you may not recognize. Let's start on the left side here. This is Padma Shri Haribhau Wakankar or Vishnu Sridhar Wakankar. Some of us these days, because of technology, we are like too much impressed by like technology, and we wonder, well, now we have a technology, but when there was no technology, how did these guys do it? Like thousands of years ago, Mahabharata, Ramayana, how did they fight the wars? But even just going back 100 years, and how did these guys do the calculations and technology and research and whatnot? This Haribhau Wakankar with his team, this is going back 70 plus years, maybe even longer. He literally walked the Paleo channel, the old channel of Saraswati, looking at the geography, looking at the old maps, a small team, literally walked through the desert, you can say from Gujarat and then Rajasthan, and traced the path of Saraswati. And you will be amazed to know that with our latest sophisticated technology, essentially what we end up doing is validating the path that he framed. Okay, Padma Shri Haribhau Wakankar. Henry Paul Frankfurt or Mary Agnes Corti, these are scientists from France. Now, they don't have a perspective of, say, ancient Indian narratives, but they have just done pure research in the context of a Saraswati and all the rivers of Northwest area. Phenomenal contribution. And when that comes, I will tell you the names. Srinivas Kalyan Ramanji, many of you would know the name. Before him, there is a Professor Parpola, Asko Parpola in University of Finland, like Helsinki. He had collected and nicely documented, see, very hard work, okay, to do. Now, he's also one of the anti-India guy, but the pro-India thing he has done is nicely documented all the seals found in Sindhu Saraswati civilization, because, where was it found, and just proper documentation system. He did that. What Srinivas Kalyan Ramanji did, okay, his background is finance, but he's so much passionate about Saraswati that he collected many other, or documented rather, all the additional seals that were found since. And because of Dr. Kalyan Ramanji, we have now, I don't know the exact number, close to 8,000 plus seals from the Sindhu Saraswati civilization. It's there for anyone to research. Okay, thanks to someone like Kalyan Ramanji. If you take a look at the scientists like Liviu Giosan or Peter Clift, done phenomenal research related to Yamuna. When I said Yamuna separated, that is their research. And of course, there are many other scientists. Let's look at, Professor K.S. Waldia, Padma Bhushan K.S. Waldia. He unfortunately passed away last year. All the faces that you are seeing on the screen, I have interacted with most of them, if not all of them, in some fashion. Sometimes, most of them I have met in person, but also communicated in various ways. Waldia, I met him 5-6 years ago at the International Saraswati Conference. Amazing individual, okay? Amazing work he has done. Then let's look at Michel Daninoji and Major General G.D. Bakshi. Everyone knows G.D. Bakshi, right? Now, what these two individuals have done, they are not per se the original researchers in the Saraswati area, but they have done a good job in bringing that knowledge out to people. Okay, so Michel Danino wrote the book, The Lost River. General G.D. Bakshi wrote a book very recently. So many people are doing, and these are not the only individuals. There are 100 others, okay, who are working in the area of River Saraswati. For example, this is the cover of book, The Saraswati Civilization by G.D. Bakshi. So if you have to start somewhere, consider a book like this, okay, or The Lost River by Michel Daninoji. Just do keep in mind that some of the research is old, like 10 years old, and not everything is necessarily matches with the evidence. So you have to have a very sharp vision as you read through these books or any work on River Saraswati. So if I have to summarize this middle portion, the pro-Indian but outdated scholarly consensus. Now, scholarly consensus is also a very interesting and a dangerous word. Okay, but let's not worry about that for now. Okay, but it's like a feel-good effect, scholarly consensus. Everyone seems to agree. Okay, more or less they agree, majority agree. That's not actually how the research progresses. It might, how the research might get distributed, but not how it progresses. But let's look at some of these things, and I'll not go through all the details. But for example, Kalibangan earthquake in 4700 BC. Yeah, the earthquake did happen. Now, rise of Yamuna, tear faults, followed by their activation. What is claimed here is absolutely not correct. Okay. Eastward turn of Yamuna from her westward flow, 3700 BP, which means what? If you subtract 2000, you get 1700 BCE. Okay, not correct. But that is the mainstream, even a pro-India understanding of Saraswati. Earthquake in Dholavira, yeah, I mean, earthquakes are happening all the time. That could be true. Submergence of Dwarka in 3600, which is what? 1600 BCE. Okay, now there could be, I am not aware of any evidence for submergence of Dwarka in 1600 BC. My point is, if you take such kind of evidence based on some emotion and hypothesis and whatnot, the problem is, look at the next one. Then it says westward turn of Satluj, southward flow. It says it happened 2600 BP, which is what? 600 BC. So Satluj is turning westward. I told you 13,000 BC, 13,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago. The mainstream view, the consensus is saying it happened 600 BC. 15,000 years versus 2,600 years. What are some of the problems? I'll just show you one, for example, and I'm going to repeat that. See, this submergence of Dwarka, and if somebody misunderstands this and faultily thinks this is the submergence of Krishna's Dwarka, Mahabharata Dwarka, guess what? This westward turning of Satluj happening in 2600 BC is a problem for Ramayana. Okay, and I'm going to show you that. The Dwarka submergence, if you assume that as a Krishna's Dwarka, that is also a problem against all the evidence from Mahabharata, all the evidence from Ramayana, and all the physical evidence on the ground, okay, from all the scientific evidence. So what we need to do is put more effort. I don't know how many of you are watching this serial. Okay, in India, I was told that it's very popular. Don't be a minimum guy if you're watching, what is that, Family Man or some such name. Okay, so, but remember, okay, we have to put more efforts. Just the minimal will not do. You know, if you are watching that serial, you would know what I'm referring to. Okay, all right. Let's look at the third part, the latest pro-India evidence-backed narrative. It's Sattvic, it's factual, it's pro-Saraswati, it's scientific, which means we have to provide the evidence. Now, I'm just quoting to just make that consistent. So I quoted this verse for the tamasic buddhi, the rajasic buddhi, and here it's for a sattviki buddhi. Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham chaya vetti buddhi sa partha sattviki. The person looks at something, person knows what is going to bind me mentally, emotionally, physically. Stay away from it. Person understands what's going to liberate me. Okay, the Sat liberates you. Unless you get to the Sat, you are not going to understand who you are. You are Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma. But only Sat, like knowing Sat is not enough. To get there to that Sat, you need to do tapasya, efforts. Without efforts, it will not happen. If you don't put your own efforts, other peoples will come with their own agendas, okay, including me. Okay, guys, don't trust me because I'm saying it. Or if you have a Shraddha in me, that's fine, that's great, and thank you. But trust, but verify. Whatever I'm saying, I want you to go back and check it on your own. Okay, so let's get into this one. What Krishna says in Bhagavad Puran. Now remember, when we think of a Puran and Bhakti, and immediately many people will say, "Bhai, main to Bhakti kar raha hu. I don't want to get into this. Mere liye wo Krishna Paramatma hai." No, but that Krishna Paramatma is telling you in a Bhagavad Puran, which is a whole grantha dedicated to Bhakti. What is he saying? Atmano Gururatma eva Purushasya Visheshatah Yat Pratyaksha Anumanabhyam Shreyo Savana Vindate. Something so unique about this Manav Janma. Okay, I'm not giving a pravachan. I'm just literally telling you, is that you can be your own guru. But how? With the help of Pratyaksha and Anumana. If you sharpen these two tools, Pratyaksha, empirical, experiential, Anumana, able to draw the right inference, you can be your own guru. That is Krishna's promise to Uddhava and therefore promise to all of us. Okay. Here is a quick summary. So let's look at this. It's a contentious issue and I want to bring it up. Never hide these issues, guys. Okay. Otherwise, a faulty knowledge just kept on getting propagated through conferences, through books, through papers. And what a sad thing it will be if it makes it to the textbooks, right? From high Himalayas to the ocean, the scholarly consensus thinks that happened during 7000 BC to 4500 BC, like Rigveda says, Giribhya a samudrat, flowing from the high mountains all the way to the ocean. They think that happened during 7000 BC to 4500 BC. I'll tell you why they think and why that is wrong. But therefore, they think Rigveda happened there. Now, they're partly correct by coincidence. The last portion of Rigveda, or the final editing, okay, recasting that was done by Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, indeed happened around the Mahabharata times, which is what, 5561 BC, 7,500 years ago. So yes, in that area. But much of the Rigveda that we have access to, the Shakal Samhita, you have to go back a long time before that 7000 BC. And I'll show you how far back you have to go. You have to go, much of the Rigveda, you have to go beyond 24,000 years. If you have to take the evidence from Rigveda and match it with what you see on the ground, the empirical evidence. Against the evidence says 172,000 BC to 10,000 BC. And it's really not saying only 172,000. I'll show you on the map. Actually, you have to go even further back. But because we don't have a physical scientific evidence to validate it, we will not say it. Okay, we can do the conjecture, we can show why we think like that, but leave it at that, not claim it. Okay, Yamuna separates Majority scholarly consensus thinks 2700 BC. The evidence shows it's 50,000, between 50,000 and 40,000 BC. Shatudri separates, they think 2700 BC or even later, as I showed you, like 600 BC. The reality is it happened 13,000 BC, 15,000 years ago. Intensification of monsoon, thank God, at least the both parties, the evidence and the scholarly consensus agrees here. Okay, lucky us. The drying of Saraswati begins 1900 BC. The evidence says 4500 BC. What is sometimes the confusion can be that definitely by 1900 BC, the Saraswati was definitely dry. That's what we know. So they may be also closer there. And so therefore what happens is because they started with a wrong premise, they meaning the scholarly consensus, now they are stuck in this 10,000 years of Indian antiquity. They say everything has to happen in last 10,000 years. And to justify that, they will say, oh, before that, there was an ice age and there was ice everywhere, freezing. Nobody could do anything. Even the rivers could not flow. Now, that's all totally wrong. The reverse is flowing, as I showed you. The evidence is saying for 200,000 plus years. Yes, there was an ice age. There is ice age right now in Antarctica and Arctic. There was an ice age in certain parts of the world. Yes, the temperatures were cooler, but India was in such a place that it was, and many other places, were thriving beautifully. Okay, even places like Japan and places like Israel were thriving beautifully 14,000 years ago, the Ramayana times and before. Okay, let's move on. So now, what is the Vedic position? Some people say, नहीं भाई, लेकिन मैं तो जो हमारे scriptures में लिखा है, books में, वही मैं मानता हूँ. No. Well, listen to Shankaracharya. I mean, who is a more jnani than Shankaracharya? He says, Jnanam na Purusha Tantram kintu Vastu Tantram. The Purusha Tantram is that like individual saying something or a what you call scholarly consensus, versus Vastu Tantram, even the Vedas do not insist that for ordinary knowledge, like if I have to see through my window and look at the color of the leaves or what kind of trees or flowers I have or my neighbors has, I don't have to go to the Vedic book. I can just do it. Bhagwan has given me these abilities to do it. Okay, so Vastu Tantram, I want to know the color of the flower that I am seeing. I just have to examine that flower. Okay, I don't have to believe what somebody says. That flower is yellow, the one I'm watching through the window right now. Somebody says it's a red. Even the book says it. I don't have to accept it. Shankaracharya said that. Even if, say, Veda tells us that the fire is not hot or the fire is cold, he says we cannot accept that statement even if it is in the Veda. Now, some areas where we do not have a direct ability to know it, like say reincarnation, what happens to Atma, how this whole karma bandhan works, how the law of karma works. In that case, we have to depend based on a Shraddha on some people that we understand they are not envious of anything and they're doing for the good of humanity. In that case, we can trust. Okay, the only Shraddha, only authority might be the way. But otherwise, Jnanam no Purusha Tantram. It's not depending on the opinion of anyone. Just examine that and you will know what it is. In fact, Veda insists that you examine. They say, Bhagwan has given you the intellect. Okay, just go do it. How old is Saraswati? We already did the story one, but now I'm going to take you through some details and then we'll get into question and answer. Let's look at from starting with antiquity, how far back, then 100K years, 50,000 years, 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, and to our times. I think that would be good enough. Let's start as far back as we can go based on the evidence. Okay, we have the evidence that shows that Saraswati flew as far back as 172,000 years down to up to 10,000 years. Okay. The reference from Rigveda, when it says Nadi Tame, Ambi Tame, Nadi Tame, Devi Tame, Saraswati, the grandest of the grand river, the greatest goddess, okay, that's Saraswati. It is referring to this time. Okay, it is referring to this time. Or there are, this is again from Rigveda, where the descriptions where I have underlined, it says, just like somebody goes to the pond and cuts the stems of the lotus flowers, like, or lotus, lotus stem, we don't call it tree, just cuts like that. Similarly, Saraswati cuts, okay, the mountain tops and then they are carried away by the waters of Saraswati. It is that strong. It is that forceful. Okay, how fast it is moving and so on. These descriptions are from a very old times. Okay, or Giribhya Samudrat, as I explained. Where does this evidence comes from? Of course, the evidence is there forever, but a very recent one is from 2020. This is the paper, Blinkhorn and the whole team in 2020. And what are they saying? This is what they're showing. The fluvial activity, meaning the activity, the evidence for a water flowing, 172, 174,000, 140, 50,000, 79, 95,000, and even up to like 26,000 years. Okay, so there is evidence for this river flowing. And just let's focus on the highlighted area. The cessation, the stopping of this fluid deposition near Nalkwari, meaning Bikaner, is contemporaneous with the onset of activity within the Ghaggar Akra. So the first picture, if you remember, like shift of Saraswati from the southeast to the northwest, I said happening around 70,000 years. So it's flowing in Bikaner area for a very long time, from 172,000 years up to 70,000. And that shift happening is like, it's as if like water stopped here and it started there. So that also tells you that was a huge shift that happened during that time. Okay, this is the actual evidence, how they dug and what they looked at into that Bikaner area. Okay, now, just because river Saraswati was flowing, we don't know if there was like a big civilization taking place. Well, there could be, there could not be. Okay, but unless we find the evidence, we cannot talk about it. So I said like there was a Saraswati 172,000 years ago, and we can speculate and say that therefore there was a civilization and Rigveda there. But because I don't have evidence, I'm not going to say that. Okay, Nyaya Darshana will tell you pramana anupapatya upapattibhyam. Okay, if the no evidence or the absence of evidence doesn't prove anything, doesn't disprove anything. So therefore, it's not true that the Rigveda was not there or civilization was not there. But we cannot also say that it was there because we don't have evidence. Okay, that is the system of our Darshana Shastra, how scientific it is. But now let's look at some of the things that we do have evidence that is in the last 100,000 years. So therefore, I said when the goddess civilized humanity, when Saraswati civilized humanity. Okay, all right. So what was happening? Now remember, going back millions of years, the Indian subcontinent on a plate, tectonic plate, it's coming and it hit the Asian mainland. Okay. And so what's happening? There is this one plate is going down, other place is going up. That's creating lots of complicated geological phenomenon. And those are responsible for the northward moving of Indian plates and therefore the changes in the morphodynamics of the Indian rivers. Okay. Now something I will tell you what happened in this time. Just I'll say the word and I'll move on. Toba explosion happened around 75,000 years ago. Okay. It was like a significant thing that happened in the Sumatra, like the Indonesia, which is that Sumatra is closer to India, like just south of Andaman Nicobar. And it spew out the ash, like the one of the biggest, or not one of the biggest geological event of last 100,000 years happened there. That is Toba explosion. So that might have something to do with this switchover. I'm just speculating. I'm not saying that that is exactly what happened, but just let's move on. If 10 years from now, 30 or 300 years from now, if people figure out and they do make the connection of a Toba explosion with this switching off or shifting of Saraswati, just remember, I said it here on the Sangam talk, okay, the first time. Okay, so now look at this Indian plate hitting into the Asia, and that's how the Himalaya is formed and how the India is protected, okay? So what is happening, what I'm showing you, so think of this as the original path of river Saraswati. Then it moved further northwest to Bikaner, and then it moved to Kalibanga area. So actually, before Bikaner also, we have a reason to believe Saraswati existed, but we have not found the evidence yet. In fact, we will go towards like Ajmer, towards Pushkar, towards Jaipur, and that might tell you. So when we think of Pushkar as a very important place in a Treta Yuga, Now, don't get confused with the number of years of Yuga and whatnot. But before Kurukshetra or Ganga after Kurukshetra, this could be related to this, but more research is required. So what is happening here? This India is coming and hitting into the Asia. And now that changes, geological changes. It's still happening, guys, okay, at a very small pace. And therefore, the things keep on changing. And that is responsible for this change path of Saraswati. What I'm showing you here is a paper of Ghosh and others going back to 50 years. Just like I told you about the Haribabu Wakankar, he had literally walked through this area and traced the path of river Saraswati. There are many other researchers, again, as I said, going back 50 years, they have actually traced the potential path. So now I don't know if Professor Ghosh is around, but imagine the joy he would have felt or joy he would feel if he looks at his map that he created based on his research in 1970. And now in 2020, the Blinkhorn team comes and they show that actually Professor Ghosh was right. What he had shown is actually what was found there. Okay. So that's what is happening. Again, before 172,000 years, where do we have to go? Possibly go towards Jaipur. Okay. So down somewhere there. And we have these channels. Okay. They are dry, but they are there. And some rivers we also see, like coming down from Jaipur towards the Pushkar and then Jodhpur and going there. Okay, right now you don't have rivers, you just have some lakes in between, but it existed, the paleo channels exist. Then we come to 172,000, Bikaner, what I showed you. And then sometime around 70,000 years ago, we come to the location like Hanumangarh or Kalibanga. Okay, this is the journey. Okay, now what's happening? 70,000 years, we have a switch over from that Bikaner area to now where? To Kalibanga, further north. Okay, all right. Now, in Kalibanga, we have evidence that Saraswati was flowing from 70,000 years all the way to up to 3000 BC, like up to 5,000 years ago. Okay, it was shrinking all the time, but it was flowing. Now, we can also find out when that happened. That green bar at the bottom tells you this is that yellow color you see, that means Saraswati was there. The river was there, water was there, something like 70,000. But as we come up, and I don't know if you can see my mouse bar, but look at there, if you can see this arrow, red arrow, follow this red arrow, 23,000, 25,000, here 23,000, here 22,000, 23,000, again 23,000. Somewhere for simplicity, around 20,000, up to 20,000 river was like this. But something happened after that, and this river became much smaller, shown by this middle green bar. One of the reasons that people have very well related is the event of LGM, last glacial maximum. That is that so-called global freezing. Okay, but freezing doesn't mean there was no civilization in India. So much of the water got stuck into the glaciers. Okay, and therefore, again, these waters were coming from Himalayas. So that water might have gone down and that might have reduced it. Okay, and then by the time you come to the 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC, the river became really, really small. And then it was almost dry by that time. Now, 50,000 to 40,000, remember Yamuna leaving Saraswati, we talked about. Yamuna turned away from Saraswati around 50,000 and 40,000 years. This is a work of Peter Cleft. Okay. Now, before that, Mary Agnes Corti has done this work. Henry Frankfurt has done this work. And IIT team like Singh and universities in UK, they did in 2017, Dave in 2018. I mean, there is so much evidence you'll get exhausted and tired. That's simply referring to Yamuna separating from Saraswati sometime between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago. Something interesting, guys. Okay. Now, I'm going to say, so far we are just talking the pure empirical evidence, but how to connect that with our narratives, how to connect with our civilization, our itihas, our history. Okay, this is how. Look at this verse there at the bottom. This is simply saying, I'll not read the Sanskrit, that Ganga and Yamuna are flowing together. You know, this is like in the Ramayana, eastern part of UP, Ayodhya. Now remember what happened to Yamuna. Yamuna only separated and started meeting Ganga only in 50,000 years ago. Only 50,000 years ago. Why is this important? The Ramayana, therefore, we should understand, is not possible beyond 50,000 years. It's not possible before 50,000 years. So now we are using empirical data pratyaksha, but we are using the anumana, but we are using something else. We are using shruti and smruti and itihasa. Okay. And that's very much required. For example, again, Krishna is telling that in Bhagavad Puran. He says, if you just look at one isolated type of discipline, your knowledge will always be confusing. It can be deluding. You may not have a full knowledge. It can be rajasic, that mixed bag. So if you want a perfect knowledge and you don't want that confusion, vikalpa, you don't want that confusion, what do you need to do? Shruti pratyakshamaitiyam anumanam chatushtayam pramaneshva anavasthanat vikalpat savirajyate. In science, we talk of the triangulation of explanation, prediction, and testing. Here, Krishna is even going further. He's saying you need to do the quadrangulation, chatushtayam. Shruti, pratyaksha, aitiya, anumana. So far, we looked at pratyaksha and anumana. Now we have to add shruti and aitiya, itihas also. Then our understanding is complete. If we are lucky, because every time we may not have all four together to bring it together. But if it's possible, we should do it. Okay. Or people many times tell me, why just do you do it in English? Do it also in other Indian languages. So I will tell you what the other Indian language that I know in Marathi. Now, this is Samartha Ramdas Swami, the guru of a great Raja Shivaji. And you know what he's saying there? Jituke anumanache bolne, tituke vamana praya tyagane, nishchayatmakatechi bolne pratyache. Just only anuman is not good. That is a pure speculation. But it's okay to do anuman, but if you start with a speculation and pretentiously start thinking this is a reality, he says, don't do it. Okay. In fact, what he's saying, just pure speculation, pure guesswork, pure opinion, pure hypothetical thinking should be treated as a vomit. He's very strong in his language. If you thought our saints were like meek and were using a soft language, even read Tulsidas ji. Tulsidas is known as a soft person, he just wants to have a peace, but even he will use very rough and tough language. It's required to wake us up. He says just pure speculation, pure opinion is to be considered as a vomit and is to be rejected. Okay. Nishchatmaka techi bolne pratyache. That pratyaya comes from pratyaksha. It has to be a combination of pratyaksha anumana. And Krishna even goes further. He says it should be combined with a shruti and itihasa. How do researchers figure this out? I'm almost done. Okay. Just to give you a simple idea so that you don't think, oh my God, this is something too complicated. Well, in a way it is complicated. You still need to study the discipline. But, rivers has signatures. Okay. The signatures are detected at different locations, different layers, and at any given location. See, the signature looks like this. Now, how many of you can read this signature? Well, I'll tell you a quick funny story that's floating around on a WhatsApp, and I'm sure you would have read it. But if not, here it is for you. Like one individual, he goes back to the doctor and he says, "Doctor, you gave me this prescription, these 5 different medicines, and I found 4. But this first one, no chemist or no pharmacist seems to have it. Like, what do I do?" I called like a 50 different pharmacists, chemists, and they say, no, we don't have it. And the doctor says, oh, no, that's not any prescription. Actually, I was just trying with my pen to see if the pen is working or not before writing the prescription. So he just scribbled something. And then the patient says, well, fortunately, he says, one of the chemists looked at it and he said, yeah, I can get that to you by tomorrow. Okay, hopefully you get the humor of it. My point is, you and me may not able to quickly understand what that signature is. It depends on the certain type of minerals, certain types of rocks, certain type of rock sizes, the kind of rocks it's bringing through its path. Based on that, as if each river has a specific signature. And then when we look at certain location, we take this whole data, we try to separate it into different signatures. And that can tell us about which river was flowing here, what different rivers were the tributaries to that river, when that was happening, how far wide was the influence, the quantity and so on. Just to show you a simple picture, suppose river A has this signature of that circle with a certain color. River B is represented by another signature. When the two meet together, of course, it will be a mixed signal. And suppose at some location, we dig it down there. No longer the river is there. Okay, it's a dry bed. We dig it like 40 meters down and we look at that layer and say, who is flowing here? Based on a signature, we can find out who was flowing here. And if we can find the timing, we know when that was happening. Then we might know when the both rivers were together, when only another river was together, or just flowing alone, or the mixture or multiple rivers. That's how this research is done. Okay. So remember, so with this kind of thing, you can know which rivers were flowing. So where, at different locations, how far the river was flowing, how wide the river was flowing, and when. For each of these questions, they all can be answered if the data is available and if it can be resolved into this signature. So that's how it is done. Back to our story. Now comes 13,000 BC, 15,000 years ago. Now Shatudri separates. So before that, what was happening? This river was going down, so this is Shatudri coming from the left, So here, Satluj River, and that's how it was part of Saraswati. The reason Saraswati was grand is because of the water of the Shatudri or Satluj, also Yamuna, and also many middle rivers. Okay. Now, this also I'm going to combine with the Itihasa. In this case, again, Ramayana. So what does that happen? In the Ramayana, so now when this Satluj stopped coming south and sharply turned westward and started flowing in 13,000 BC, that is what IIT Kanpur research study shows. 2017 paper. This graph is from that paper. Now, Valmiki Ramayana says, when Bharat comes from Kekaya to Ayodhya, Shatadru or Satluj is described as that river which is flowing with lots of water, but flowing in the west direction. What does that tell you guys? So that's the empirical data. Now, if you pull the historical information and use your Anumana, logical reasoning, it tells you that Ramayana has to happen after 13,000 BC, because in Valmiki Ramayana, Shatudru is described as flowing westward. Okay, so that's how we bring all those together. Shruti, Pratyaksha, Aitiyam, Anumanam, Chatushtayam. Now, this is a very recent paper, I think 2019 or so. Good paper, Chatterjee and group. It has created problems for our scholars. Does perennial mean glacier fed? This is their confusion. Okay, the scholarly consensus assumes that perennial river in 7,000 to 4,500 BC. I'm going to show you why they make this mistake. But based on this, they made another assumption, like premise, and that premise is wrong. They said, if there is a perennial river, it has to be glacier fed. Like the water has to come from all the way from Himalayas. Some of you must be nodding the head in different directions. And the river flowing from high mountains, therefore, the river Saraswati of Rigveda, Giribhya Samudra, must belong to this 7,000 BC plus 4,500 BC. Now remember, if your premise is wrong, any conclusion you draw will also be wrong. Okay, so now what is the problem with this issue? The problem is this. For a river to be perennial, it does not need to be glacier fed. Now, India has so many, of course, around the world too, but India has so many rivers. Okay, the Chambar, the Betwa, the Shon, Narmada, Tapi, Godavari, Krishna, Bhima, Tunga, Bhadra, Kaveri, Vaigai, Tamraparni, all the way I'm going to the south. These are all rivers not fed by glacier water, and they are perennial. Okay, so the premise is wrong, therefore the conclusion is wrong. Last 10,000 years. The drying and extinction. Now, this is the research that is consistently been shown for last 50 plus years. Mary Corty, 1986, Henry Frankfurt, 1992, Peter Cliff that I showed, 2012. Okay, Dave, Singh, this is so much research. And if you are not satisfied, I don't know why you would not be satisfied, but Konde, 2014, 2016, 2017, what I'm showing you is a Konde's paper. What that data is showing is that there was no grand river that started in the mountains and went all the way to the ocean in the last 10,000 years. Listen carefully. They are not saying that there was no grand river going from there. No, actually they said there is evidence to show that it existed before, but not in the last 10,000 years. Okay, now it may create some problem. For example, now we'll come to the Mahabharata. Now you see the paleo channels. What I'm showing you on the left are the old paths of these rivers. There is no currently water into these Saraswati channels. So now no Himalayan river flowed all the way to the great run of Kutch in last 10,000 years. Okay. Now somebody will ask, but hold on. In the Mahabharata times, that even based on Mahabharata internal research that goes to 7,500 years ago, only can go to 7,500 years ago, that describes river Saraswati flowing with lots of water in many places, if not all places. Okay. How is that possible? Well, if you look at the evidence, the answer will be there. This is a work of Anindya Sarkar 2016 paper. Look at that central portion. That blue color is not done by me. That is coming from that research paper. The evidence comes from the Arabian Sea. Evidence comes from the lakes in Rajasthan. Evidence comes from the entire Sindhu-Saraswati region, from the land, from the lakes, and from the oceans. What is it showing you? It is showing you that there was an intensification of monsoon between 7,000 BC to 4,500 BC. And that will explain why there was a copious quantity of water into this path of river Saraswati, intensification of monsoon. It beautifully corroborates 100 plus references of Saraswati that appear in Mahabharata. Sometimes the Saraswati is flowing with beautiful lots of water. Other times it has disappeared. Vinashan is also there. Other times it has disappeared under the sand. Some places it's flowing below the sand. Other places it's coming out of the sand. Saraswati is in flux 7,500 years ago. And that can be beautifully explained by this intensification of monsoon. This is not to be confused with the mainstream core Rigveda. For core Rigveda, we have to go before 24,000 years, quickly to the present. The paradox, but also passing the baton. Okay. So Pratyaksha Anumana tells us Yamuna separated from Saraswati 50,000, 40,000 BC, those many years ago. The scholarly consensus hangs on 2700 BC. Look at the language. Okay. I'm just pulling from some of the researchers that I showed you. Sorry. Appears to have occurred. Now, that's not evidence, guys. That's a speculation. Nothing wrong with speculation, but do not take that as evidence. Or if you see the other underlying thing, this is about the time when our hypothetical event is you are imagining, perfectly fine, but that doesn't make it an actual event. Or look at from another author. He says, it is said that there was a major tectonic plate. You see the language? It is said. This is not evidence, guys. Major tectonic plate shift some 4,700 years from today. Nah, that's not how research works. Okay. All right. So Pratyaksha Anumana says the Saraswati existed for 200,000 plus years or so. Scholarly consensus is stuck in 8,000 BC or after. My prediction, just when it's 7,000-year-old prediction, when I wrote my Ramayana, immediately I said, oh, Saraswati has to be more than 14,000 years ago, the Saraswati of Rigveda, because even the Ramayana, the Saraswati is a relatively small river. That is 14,000 years ago. So the grand Saraswati of Rigveda has to be long before that. That is what I made a prediction in 2014. That is what I presented in 2 international Saraswati conferences. Quickly, the last point. Now, the grandest river. Now, remember, many researchers will quote this Nadi Sukta, the Gangecha, Yamunecha, Saraswati. Beautiful, right? 19 rivers. But if you read this Sukta, this is the very late Sukta, 10th Mandala, and that's why I'm not saying it's a late Sukta. By many explanation, you can know why it is a late Sukta if you read Srikanta Lagiriji or many others. But what many of these researchers will show you this verse, but what they will not show from the same Sukta is this verse. I'll not spend time here. Or this verse from the same Sukta. Do you know what it is saying? In the Nadi Sukta, it refers to all the 19 rivers. Saraswati exists, but it is saying Sindhu is the grandest river. That Nadi Sukta refers to all rivers, but Sindhu Nadi now is the grand river. When is that? Interesting. I'll tell you this. I don't know when exactly this sutra was written, but what can be said is this. If one is looking for the river Saraswati as the grandest river of India, one must go before 13,000 BC, 15,000 years ago. Do you know why? Of course, Ramayana says that. Because of Ramayana also, we have to go back now that I showed Ramayana 14,000 years ago. But just purely from a river evidence, remember, Yamuna is gone 50,000 years ago. Satluj is gone 13,000 years ago. And still, if we are going to call Saraswati the grand river, well, that's not possible. We have to go before 13,000 years ago. It also explains Satluj turning westward and now meeting eventually Sindhu also explains why Sindhu is the grandest river after some time, okay, after 13,000 BC. Okay, number of you have seen my work here. This dating of Mahabharata, Ramayana came from astronomy, nothing to do with the river. But my point is, it beautifully corroborates all the Saraswati evidence that I showed you. It also shows you how beautifully it corroborates the Rigveda evidence going back more than 24,000 years. Okay. And if you think we are done, like final word has been said, not at all. That never happens in science. That never happens in Adhyatma. Never a final word is said. Okay. This is a chart created by one of my co-researcher and original researcher in her own point of view and for a reason. I mean, she very well deserves that, Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji. She has created this. So all that we talked today approximately was like this, this area. But there are references in Rigveda. Now, this is like a anumana at this point. Not everything is validated. So we don't want to say that therefore it is so. But there are reasons to believe that even some of those references from Rigveda takes us back to 220,000 years. Okay, but the evidence is not there other than Rigveda, so we have to wait until then. Very complex phenomenon, talks of the monsoon, talks of the climatology. I mean, this one, if you are trying to understand without any background, don't. Okay, all right. Quick key takeaways and I'm done. River Saraswati is flowing for a very long time. Grand river, 200,000 plus years to 22,000 BC. Yamuna separated from Saraswati between 50,000 and 40,000 BC. The last glacial maximum where much of the water got stuck into the glaciers, I mean the ice, into ice form and was not melting as much. That might explain why Saraswati shrunk further around that 20,000 years as we saw in the Kalibanga. Okay, Ramayana time Saraswati exists, but it's not a grand river. That is 12,000 years, 14,000 years ago, 12,000 BC. Satluj separated from Saraswati, 13,000 BC. We have a reference in Ramayana that gives that terminus post-quem or, this terminus ante-quem, depending on what are you studying. Intensification of monsoon, we talked about it. That explains the Saraswati descriptions from the Mahabharata text. All of us together, guys, one individual cannot do it. Few individuals cannot do it. Let's expose and eliminate the fakery, eliminate the dogma, agenda-driven research, critique each other. Okay, we will learn. Vade vade jayate tattva bodho. That's how we are going to learn. Let the truth prevail. And Sanatan Vedic Dharma, if you are so proud of saying Sanatan Dharma, then understand it's a Nitya Nutana. It always wants to refresh itself. It always wants to, it's eager, it's willing to refresh itself in the presence of new evidence. Desha, Kala, and Patra. Okay, according to time, place, and circumstances. Circumstances meaning new evidence sometime. Okay, we are willing to change. We are willing to change our statement. Something that I would have made today, if it's shown to be wrong tomorrow, I should able to say, correct myself and say, I stand corrected. Okay, so truth can wait. It is used to it. And that was my last note.
My question is, however, pride in the past should force us to rise in the present and surpass, say, countries like USA and China. From your experience of USA and India, tell us what common man like us to take our country to the top of the world, irrespective of what the government does or does not do.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much. So every one of us, Swadharma, like everyone, if we just look around, there are people around when you go to the square or to the mandir or to a school or just a social gathering, talk about this. These are not subjects to be reserved for academia. I told you what the academia stands for most part. Okay. These are to be discussed, and these become very interesting. Actually, they become so interesting. I don't need to watch the Amazon serials. Okay. This is more excitement than what you can see. Same thing with Mahabharata and Ramayana. If you actually get into it and start reading, I mean, what is that? The Game of Thrones or whatever you're watching, it just pales in comparison to what you will see in a Ramayana, Mahabharata. So everyone can do whatever they are capable of. Talk to your family members, talk to the children, parents, grandkids, your friends. And that's how we have to do it. Not leave it to few people. That's not how it works. Thank you.
My question is actually with regard to your classification of the fraud, rhetoric, and truth. Fraud, we are all okay with. But the difference between the rhetoric and truth, for example, you put the book Saraswati Civilization by Major General Bakshi, and you put it under rhetoric. I read the book last year, and I thought it was an awesome book, simply because it makes a start in trying to present the evidence like what you were saying, and positions it very well, posits it very well. It's a lot of like hard work and research. So what then would make a book, if a book like that, you would still say comes under rhetoric? Then is the truth is something that we're just going to keep floundering towards? That was one. And also, why are we so obsessed with evidence and providing evidence always for our things, when actually none of the Western world has provided any evidence? If we go by evidence that way, Jesus Christ would not look like what he's presented there, like this handsome, Roman look. And all. He was Jewish. And I've read Colin Wilson's A Criminal History of Mankind, in which it was said that when he was in hiding, there were posters put out by the Romans where he was actually a hunchback. So that is what the evidence is, but what they present is something else. Whereas we Hindus are always, trying to show everything with evidence. Don't you think that's a defensive sort of position? That's two questions actually.
Okay, yeah. 2 or 3 possibly. Yeah, thank you. So in fact, if you notice carefully, I encourage people to read General Bakshi's book, not only his book or even Michel D'Annunzio's book. Okay. What I say, and so that's not like under rhetoric. In fact, I put many researchers like Srinivas Kalyanaramanji. I mean, so I put it in the middle, in the sense, when you read that, you don't get the full picture. Now, it's not to say General Bakshiji has not used the evidence. And I'm not saying Michel D'Annunzio has not used the evidence. He has used tremendous evidence. But if you look at the conclusion, I don't want to say one, but if you look at the conclusion is whether Michel D'Annunzio's book or Bakshi's book. General Bakshi was with me at the Jaipur Dialogues, I forgot when, a year ago or maybe 6 months ago. And we were on the same panel. And he said, yeah, I mean, I'm in principle, the time can go back much longer. He said that, and I didn't put him on the spot and said, why did you not include it? But my point is, if you go back 50, 60 years, there is an enormous evidence that is telling us what I showed you today. Like, I don't have any attachment to 170 or 50,000 or something. So 50,000 Yamuna separating or 13,000 Satluj separating versus consensus. So as I said, Michel D'Annunzio or General Bakshiji, they themselves have not done the research. They are collecting the research of others. So I'm saying, if one is not careful, and these people have got a great admiration among our society, then the wrong knowledge gets propagated. It might be happen by error. And that is that Rajasi, I mean, the rhetoric in the sense, it is a mixed, yathavat. It's not perfectly wrong. I mean, it's not completely wrong, but it's not completely accurate either. The proper care has not been taken. That's one possibility. Or Rajasa is generally by emotion. You already have some emotion and you're trying to defend it, justify it. That is the quadrant. I may fall into it in some other case. I mean, that is always a possibility. We all actually will fall into all 3 of the quadrants. And our idea is to be careful of that. So it wasn't a point to show somebody down saying, oh, you are in a rhetoric quadrant or something. But if I don't do this, see, for example, therefore I quoted Samartha Ramdas Swami. He's not mincing words. Nassim Nicholas Taleb is not mincing word. Now, some academics are going to get upset about it. So what? Let them be upset. Right? So, I mean, but we have to tell the truth. Why are we only going after the evidence? Why Indians? No, actually, you will find, I will disagree with that. The majority of the Indians, and I'm talking in a generalization, actually don't understand what evidence means. If they read, you are on the mute. If they read in a book, they might consider that as a, you can unmute yourself, but if they read in the book, they might consider that as evidence. No, that is a Shabda Praman. The journey begins there. It doesn't end there.
No, I didn't mean general. I meant researchers, academicians, men of science like yourself. I'm not decrying that. I'm just saying that, and it's great that we're all researching and finding new things. But it's again, to me, I just feel as an observer, it's again, we are just being put on the defensive. None of these others are really worried about anything else. That's why I gave the example of Jesus Christ, Until now, that's
I understood.
2,500 years.
Right. So Deepanjali, I mean, you may be, and I'm not putting the words in your mouth, you may be comfortable saying, hey, they are doing this, let's ourselves do that too. Now, some of us are doing it, and that's okay. I mean, what am I going to do? Even if I don't like it, some of us are doing it. But if you're just asking for my personal thing, my approach is what I just presented, and that is in total agreement with our Darshan Shastra. Okay, total agreement with our Darshan Shastra. This is a Pramana Taschartha Pratipatti. Unless you have evidence, don't speak out. That's our philosophy. Okay, thank you.
So Rohit's question is: how do we identify, monitor all tamasic raising narration, since we are organized or centralized entity?
Yeah, that's not directly related to this. I will say one has to study Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Bhagavad Gita talks about the Sattva Rajatama so much that you will be exhausted, but still it has a more to give. And if that's not enough, again start reading Bhagavad Puran. Okay, there is enough information. We don't need to do this on this show.
I have a question that we've seen generally that the great civilizations have grown and thrived next to those big rivers. So talking about archaeology, does it mean that we have been digging at wrong places, talking about the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro civilizations? So this is one question. And second, just one point or a comment, or rather a piece of information. There's a place called Adi Badri, I think 40 kilometers from Yamuna Nagar. So
I've been there.
There they have marked the Udgam Sthal of this great river Saraswati.
That is correct, because see what happens. The Saraswati did flow through Kurukshetra area. Then the big rivers became tributaries, but the name, when two rivers come together, like if you think of a Devaprayag, like Alaknanda and Bhagirathi come together, and now what do you call that river afterwards? You have to kind of make a judgment and agreement, right? Like we are going to call it Ganga or Bhagirathi or Alaknanda. It's something similar. So that's the second point. The first point is, are we digging in the wrong places? First thing, remember, finding the archaeological evidence is like looking for a, what do you call, like a paperclip in a haystack, something like that. Okay, a pin in a haystack. But based on the evidence that we have found, by luck or by intelligence, we should say we are digging in the right place, because we are getting all these tons of evidence and we are finding it. So I don't think we are digging in the wrong places. It's just very costly affair. People do not realize how costly it is.
So I just wanted to add one corroborative thing. Maybe it will work out later from the Puranas. So it says that when Bhargavas and the Haihayas were fighting, probably the Parashurams fight with Sahasrabahu, a huge fire got created that had a potential to destroy the earth. And then Shiva wanted Saraswati to carry that fire to the ocean. So, and in that journey, it had a journey with 3 more corroborative stories in between. But during that journey, it is said Saraswati shifted 2 times towards north while still going to the ocean.
Interesting.
So I found a great corroborative, with the 2 lines that you shown. Right?
It is.
So 2 times he shifted to north and still went down. Yeah. So just wanted to share that with you. Maybe
very good. No, thank you. If you can find those specific references from Skanda Puran and send it to me. I mean, there are 10 different ways of getting to me, social media, whatnot, or through Sangam. Please do it. And this is a good example. Now, this doesn't immediately tell us, therefore, that exactly refers to those phenomena. We don't know that. Having said that, it just also gives us a good example, assuming it is, how a geological, astronomical, the physical phenomenons, how they are captured in a story form, is as a metaphorical story form. And that is how the knowledge, that's why again Krishna is saying Shruti, Taittiriya Aranyak says Smruti. Shruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam is in Bhagavad Puran. Taittiriya Aranyak says Smruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam. So Shruti, Smruti, Purana, Itihasa, Pratyaksha, Anumana, they all come together. So this is like a mnemonics to remember that switching of Saraswati from southeast to northwest. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And please, if you can find the references, if you send it to me, that will be great.
So, and also a fire that is able to destroy the earth. And if you then link it with a tectonic shift, and what kind of effect would it have? Maybe, volcanoes coming up more. So
Correct.
2-3 things links very well.
Yes, the Toba explosion. You gave me a soft corroborative evidence for my Toba explosion theory and 70,000 shift of Saraswati.
What are your views on the Saraswati of Prayagraj mentioned in the Ramayana or Ramcharitmanas? If the flow of the grand Saraswati is to the west, how do we comprehend the merging of the 3 rivers, Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati?
Okay. So simple answer is, it is our emotional memory of it. Emotional memory of Saraswati that is now lost, but we still need a place to remember it. And that's why it is taught at the Prayagraj, because Yamuna, which was a tributary of Saraswati, is bringing there. In fact, you can see Saraswati many places. It is in the memory of that big grand river. That is not at all a surprising or isolated phenomenon at all. Dwarka, Krishna's Dwarka, which got flooded and destroyed in 5525 BCE, that is inside 20-30 kilometers inside. Now we have a Krishna's Dwarka, on the land. And if you go across the Gujarat ocean seashore, you will find 2 or 3 additional Dwarkas. They are all called Mula Dwarka, Mula Dwarka, Mula Dwarka. It is in the memory, it is our social memory, civilizational memory for that place which no longer exists. The same logic applies to presence of Saraswati that is accepted, imagined, in a Shraddha, believed at Prayagraj.
Another question by Vamsi Reddy ji. She says, not only of Swadhyay, is there any other coursework that can really take us into Indology and not fall into the hands of Romila Thappars?
Okay, I mean, people can, so Swadhyay is the one right now. The courses, the challenge is someone has to do it. I mean, I always think of doing it, but I have like ideas for 20 courses and I haven't found time to even get one out there yet, So the idea is there. But again, I would say, go back to like, say book of, say the Lost River of Mr. Banerjee, or what Bakshiji has done. That's a good starting point. I mean, read that. Okay. That's a good starting point. And then you will get interested enough that you will have the courage. I mean, it doesn't take much, but you will start reading the research papers, like the number of researchers that I mentioned. You listen to the talks. I mean, like this talk, but many other such. I mean, this is not my first talk on Saraswati. I have given many talks on Saraswati. Many other people are giving talks. Like I can just go and list 20 people there, but I'll not do that. Just go to YouTube, type Saraswati, and you'll get a lot of information.
I have 2 questions. First is this Dasharata Yajna, it happened after Mahabharata or before that?
Okay, do you mean the Dasharatnya war, like a Sudas?
Yes.
Forget Mahabharata. It happened very long time ago. It happened before Ramayana. Okay, and just because you asked the question, I'll take that opportunity to throw in my Anumana. Okay, but it is only Anumana. It is not backed by the evidence. Actually, there is some evidence. There are 2 pieces of evidence. But so I'll just take also opportunity to tell you something else, tell everyone. When I assert something, it typically means I have tons of evidence. Otherwise, I don't claim something as assertion. Okay, it's just not 1, 2, it is more. Actually, I have two pieces of evidence right now for what I'm going to tell you, Dasharatne Award, but I'm not going to tell what that evidence is because I need to be convinced myself. I personally think, based on the evidence that I have, and I could be very well wrong, okay? And it's that is the beauty of things getting recorded. So I have said this too. I think possibly I'm looking at somewhere around 60 to 55,000 BC. This is in my mind for Dasharatne War. Okay, 60 to 54,000 BC. So go to the next question.
This one related to anthropology. Did Bharatiyas and Mongolite people and Europeans really evolved from the Africans? I have observed one thing. These Africans, their skull structure is almost similar to gorillas. And these Mongolite people, their skull structure similar to orangutan. Only the missing thing is this Hindustanis and Europeans. There is nothing ape that can connect or relate to this thing. So, bit creating doubt in me whether these Westerners really said the truth or they are misleading.
Okay. So just as a simple humorous note, I would say then we are Vanaras. Okay. if they are similar to this, let's call ourselves, we are like Vanaras. The point is the one theory, and it's not, see, let's just be careful also. I mean, not that I'm telling you, we are not talking of West as a bad and we as a good. No, that's not the point. We have got good and bad. They have got good and bad. There are so many things that you can learn from the West. The amount of tapasya they will do, the detail they will go in against all odds. I mean, for them, the Sanskrit is foreign. I mean, they don't understand the culture. They don't understand Ityasa. And the kind of work they do is amazing. Even the people I showed you in the first category, amazing work. I mean, this is not anything against that individual. It is about their work that I am critiquing or criticizing, not those individuals. Okay, somewhere they might have done phenomenal work or their work ethic is good. Just quickly to answer your question, this mainstream theory right now, you can call this scholarly consensus, is that everything started in Africa as far as that, and it went there around through India. Now they have to accept that because of genetic evidence. But there is enough evidence if you look for it, and I have looked for it. I just can't do research in all these areas, that there is enough evidence to propose or to possibly believe a multi-point origin of human beings. Okay, what we call human beings right now, it's like a multiple species. Like we look at a crow and we think there's only one type of crow or one type of domestic mouse. That is not true. That people have come from many different things and they can intermingle and they can even create a progeny. And so that is possibly what has happened. But we'll stop on that just because that's not the main subject today. Okay. Thank you.
One question from Murlidhar first. Nilesh, when you present geological evidence, we see that there are many studies on the same point, say moving away of Yamuna. In Danino's book also, there is a list of such conflicting studies or papers. So how can we conclude that a few of these papers which say point to the timeline you have proposed is correct?
Okay, so I don't know who read the question, but the answer is actually what he said is not true. People may claim different things, but claim is a different story. Evidence is a different story. If you look at all the evidence, not the one I presented today, whatever I presented plus everything and anything that is available to this day, okay, there is no evidence, zilch, zero, for the separation of Yamuna from Saraswati, what is that timeline they are talking, 2700 BCE or after. There is zilch evidence, zero, nada, for separation of Shatudri from Saraswati 2700 BC or after. So people, I mean, not just Michel Danino. Michel Danino says that. In fact, if some of the pages that I showed and I underline and saying our hypothetical event, or it appears, or people say that, it is said that, these are from, say one thing was taken from book of Michel Danino ji, the Lost River. The other one was taken from book of General Bakshi ji. Okay, but I'm saying, why just these two books? Read any books on Saraswati. The evidence, see, the evidence will always has to come together. Now, sometime you can have evidence that contradicts each other. That is possible. What do we do in that case? We look at the occurrences of that evidence, right? So for example, every time I do this, like tossing a coin, and what is happening? If I toss a coin and 100 times I toss it, and 100 times it comes heads, I should start doubting, maybe there is a head on both sides. Okay. So actually, no, if you look at the evidence, no, people have different, they have interpreted it wrongly or interpreted it differently. But as far as the evidence goes, it's, I have checked it evidence, and whoever asked that question, I would encourage that person to go into the evidence, not read what people say. And this is not about Michel ji or Bakshi ji. I'm telling you as a very generic one. This is my quote, you can say. You can put my name next to it. But I heard from someone I don't know. I will say, in general, anywhere, do not trust 100% of what people say. Trust 50% of what they do. That something similarly applies to the evidence. So anytime somebody claims something, you say, what is your evidence? Like in the court, in the law, they say, and what's your charge? Why are you arresting me? And what's the evidence? I think we have to get into that. And I think Deepanjali mentioned why we should be like so obsessed with evidence when others are not. Well, we shouldn't be obsessed with evidence, but we should go for the evidence, because that is the path to Satya. Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharena nityam. That samyak, that balance is brought to us because of the evidence. Otherwise, if we have to summarize Bhagavad Gita in one word, it is that samyak, that balancing. Okay, so that we are not extremist of any kind. And that is been achieved with the help of evidence. And that's why we care for evidence. Thank you.
So just one clarification. When I said that we had been digging probably in the past at wrong places, and we have basically associated the Indian civilization with like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, probably, which is like 2500 before BC, let's say. So what I meant was, in the light of the fact that what you stated today, 50,000, 20,000 years, Saraswati used to be a grand river. So what I meant to say was that if we start digging at these places, probably associated with the river or where its paleo channel is, so we may find evidence of, civilization, and, which can take us, probably India can then be considered as the cradle of civilization. And for example, your date Mahabharata is like 5561 BC. So maybe we are able to establish that archaeologically as well. And then probably it will put to an end to all those controversies.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the good point, but let me add something. First thing, to think that everything will be achieved archaeologically is not correct. But you didn't say that, but I'm saying the second point is, in fact, everything that I discussed today is archaeology. See, we are brainwashed into thinking archaeology means finding some pots and pan. Okay. That Jamana is gone, guys. That is like 100 years ago. Okay. Or 150 years ago, 300 years ago. Everything that I showed today, this like looking at this, digging into the soil, looking at the rivers and connecting with them, connecting these rivers, turning their descriptions into Ramayana, Mahabharata, Rigveda. This is archaeology. And if you don't agree, Sukeji, you are agreeing with me, but anyone doesn't agree, they can go to Wikipedia and look at the definition of archaeology. They should read what archaeology is. Second thing, if we are under the impression that finally we'll find something archaeologically and then my date will get somehow validated. No. For example, my work for the dating of Mahabharata, 5561 BC, based on the internal evidence of Mahabharata, is valid on its own merit. If something else comes, it will just provide additional corroborative evidence. And right now, there are like 10 to 20 different disciplines of science. The evidence existing from that sciences have or are supporting my date for Ramayana, for Mahabharata, for Rigveda. It is there. See, we can never say, oh, I need this much data and then finally the world will agree. No, that's not. Now what Deepanjali is saying has a value. whether the world agrees for certain thing or not, it doesn't even depend sometime on the evidence. It depends on how confident we are. See, for example, our enemies are not among non-Indians. Like Savarkar said, he's not worried about the obvious enemies of Indian civilization. He's worried about those Indians in the garb of claiming to be Indian actually do disastrous things. So sometimes, the evidence may exist. Like that is, I think, possibly maybe Deepanjali was making that point. Like Jesus, you might have seen a Life magazine, the 30 different kind of Jesus, from African American Jesus to Anglican to Scandinavian to wherever, to Chinese Jesus and Indian Jesus. In some point, it has to become part of a narrative. And how does it become a narrative? Not by few researchers. When everyone starts talking about it, the changes takes place. Okay. So yes. So we should continue to do this evidence, but this is not a either or scenario. This is not like at certain point we get sufficient evidence, so therefore world believes. That is not true. Okay. We have right now more evidence, much more, 100 times more evidence, cultural evidence, archaeological evidence, astronomical evidence from all different sciences than any other civilization in the world. Period. So I don't think we are lacking on the evidence. We are lacking on the will. We are so busy into the other affairs. And then sometimes, I don't mean you, Sukeshji, when we come to a talk like this, then, suddenly like a Smashan Vairagya, now we feel like, "Arey, yaar, kuch to apna civilization ke liye karna chahiye." Then again, we get back busy into our affairs. I understand that. That's the reality. But we need to have a unified voice. That needs to happen through governments, through public intellectuals, through teachers, through social workers, everyone. Thank you.
Nilesh, actually, I have tremendous respect for the work you do, as you know, and I believe very strongly in evidence-based research. My point was that, what's happening is, no matter how much you publish or Major General Bakshi or anybody, even the greatest researchers, who are we publishing for? That's what I meant. It's not directly related to your talk per se, but it's on a broader issue. Are they ever going to accept, no matter what evidence is given? Because the moment they accept that, fundamentally, it means that the start of civilization is not them. The start of civilization is here. And that they cannot accept. That is not going to happen. So what we are doing, my fear is it shouldn't be an echo chamber of that sort. That, we all will try our best to disseminate all the information that we get, and spread the word around. But there's a lot, and like you rightly said, our own enemies. I think you know about what happened last year, where Major General Bakshi was not allowed to speak, I think, in JNU on the Saraswati Civilization book, when he was actually sent an invite, and there was a huge hue and cry from the students about, what is this Hinduization and this and that, and So we have far more sort of, forces opposing this. That was why I said that. By all means, we should continue, but not be so defensive. I think we should just hit back at them and say, okay, let's just talk about what's the start of your civilization, because they have that benchmark. No?
Correct. Everything correct. So Deepanjali, what you said, I do that. When I get across these people, I do that. But again, they have a different type of strength, right? But see, where is the problem? The problem is not with them again. The problem is with us. Because, as I said, I get emails, people saying, Nileshji, I want to send my kid to Indology, which university I should send? Which means they want to send their kid to Indology studies in America. And how ignorant are they about the whole Indology business, right? So it is our ignorance that we need to work on. There is no work on their side. That's why I said even on the evidence side that's why I took your name. I said what Deepanjali might be saying is, guys, we have enough evidence. The evidence itself is not an issue, actually. It is what is the strategy? How do we do it? And I think the strategy is not to convince them. The strategy is to convince ourselves. And, it should become our second nature to it. Many of us don't understand. And maybe, again, we should take a blame that we don't do a good job of explaining, because there's just so much to do. Is like why this even matters. To the extent many people say, "Theek hai bhai, Saraswati kahan to, flowing it. So how does it matter today? Or what do I do it for tomorrow?" But these are also interlinked, even for how we would invent things and solve our internal problems today. okay, to have that confidence, the emotional confidence, but actually physical confidence, because we think everything there is a myth. That's why even when the solution is given, we don't think that is a solution. And now, but somebody from Russia comes, looks at the Mahabharata and says, oh, there is a weapon based on a sound technology. Let me go and try it out. And actually they succeed. But we think it's a myth. So there is no question of we even trying it. And even in the academia or the conferences, like I decided I'm not going to attend any conference, even the Indology conference for like next 10 years or so. Because what happens there is it's just a jatra, like Rajiv Malhotra ji talks about it. It's like a mela. People come and talk the same thing. Ek dusre ko milte hai, you know, it's all that and it's over. No, I don't want to waste my time. So we have to, I mean, your point is well, and we look at likes of you and not just you, I mean, but others to come up with the strategy. And thank you for what you are doing, like taking this knowledge and trying to spread it in a certain way. But it's not a job for one or two people. It's a job for many.
I had some doubts regarding the Saraswati, the key takeaways which you mentioned. The fact is established that the river used to flow 50,000 years as 50,000 years BC as well. In Rig Veda, it is mentioned that the Smarta sect in Rig Veda teaches us to bury the corpse, and the Srautra sect in Rig Veda teaches us to cremate the corpse. So the fact is established that the river was there, but how could we figure out that this civilization used to exist on the banks on the river? Because we haven't found an actual corpse or something like that on the banks of the river, which used to exist 50,000 years ago. I mean, my question was, if Rig Veda teaches us to bury the corpse, that means the fact is established that burial used to happen, and which was Sanatan 50,000 years as well.
No. It doesn't. No, see, no. Stop. I will stop you. The Rig Veda states something. Immediately, it doesn't take you to 50,000. Because Rig Veda is not a text that was written exactly like a stamped 50,000. It's not like a Nilesh Oak book on Ramayana published in 2014. It is the wisdom of the sages. Okay, so that's why if you paid attention, eventually, I mean, to the best of our knowledge, we know it was re-edited, recasted, and finally put in the form that it is available to us. The only thing that is available to us today, Shakala Samhita, is more than likely of the Mahabharata times, because that's what Mahabharata says of a Veda Vyasa 7,500 years ago. The actual content of Rig Veda can be 10,000, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, 200, 300. We don't know that. So that's why I ask you, just jump into the question. So your question is, with the rivers is flowing, Rig Veda, you are saying older, but we haven't found any archaeological evidence. How do we build? See, that's the question. Don't bring the corpses and burying them or cremating them. The Rig Veda has a statement. Rig Veda has both methods. I think it's a 10.51 or 10.15 mandala. It says, we have both methods, like burying, but also cremation. Okay, so that has nothing to do with your question. I mean, why ask that question? So now what happens is, let me take some example. So like say, how did we do with the Ramayana? Like Ramayana is talking of a river, Satluj, flowing westward. That's why it tells us that it has to be after 13,000 BC. Right? Similarly, Rig Veda is talking. So somebody is talking, somebody is noticing, somebody is seeing it. Therefore, he's describing it, or he or she describing it. Giribhya a samudra. Or that, so that Saraswati flowing from the high mountains to the oceans, to the ocean. All the evidence that I discussed today, it is telling us such a river did exist, but such a river did not exist in last 10,000 years. That tells you that whatever that statement of a Rig Veda, Giribhya, Samudra, definitely more than 10,000 years old. That's all it tells you. That is how you draw the inferences. Does that make sense? So I am not claiming 50,000 years, that statement is from 50,000 years. No, I didn't say that anywhere. In fact, I said, unless I have evidence, I will not say anything. Right? A certain description has to be there. But Grand Saraswati can only exist before 24,000 years based on the empirical data. So if Rig Veda is talking of the grandest river as a Saraswati, some portions of it, or wherever this is stated, we can say that it goes before 24,000 years. That's all we can say.